The night was cold and the sky was heavy with dark clouds. A storm had passed only an hour ago, leaving the forest wet and silent. The small wooden house on the edge of the trees stood lonely, with only a single candle glowing inside. Inside the house lived Mira, a widow. She had been alone for 3 years since her husband died in the last war. People in the village often told her to move away, to live closer to others, but she refused. This house had memories of her husband. Every wall, every chair, and even the garden outside reminded her of the life she once had. But now that life was gone. She lived in silence. She cooked for herself, she repaired her tools, and she talked to no one. Sometimes when the night was very quiet, she spoke out loud, pretending her husband could still hear her. On this night, Mira sat near the small fire, holding a cup of tea. The storm had made her restless. She listened to the forest outside. Normally, she loved the sound of rain on the roof, but tonight she felt strange, like something was coming. Then, it happened. A loud crash shook the forest. It was not thunder. It was deeper, sharper, and it came from the ground, not the sky. Mira froze. Her heart raced. For a moment she thought a tree had fallen, but no. This sound was different, unnatural. She stood, grabbed her lantern, and opened the door. The forest was dark and wet, mist curling between the trees. The air smelled of smoke. She hesitated. A voice inside her told her to go back inside, to lock the door and stay safe. But another voice, more stronger, pushed her to move forward. She stepped into the night. The wet grass brushed against her dress as she followed the smell of smoke. Her lantern flickered in the wind, casting long shadows. Every step she took made her heart beat faster. She remembered her husband's words from long ago. Fear can save you, but it can also blind you. Choose wisely. After a few minutes, she saw it. A long trail of broken branches and burned soil cut through the forest, like something had fallen from the sky. Mira's breath caught in her throat. She followed the trail until she reached a small crater glowing faintly. Smoke rose into the air, and there at the center of the crater was a figure. It was tall, maybe taller than any man she had seen. Its body was strange, shining faintly, covered with dark armor-like skin. But what froze her heart was the blood. The figure was badly wounded, and its blood was not red but blue, glowing softly in the darkness. Mira gasped and stumbled back. Her first thought was to run. This was not human. It was something from the sky, from another world. Every story she had heard about monsters and demons rushed into her mind. The figure moved, slowly, weakly. It tried to rise, but collapsed again with a low sound, half growl, half cry of pain. Mira stood there shaking. She could turn around. She could run home, lock her door, and forget she ever saw this. Nobody would believe her anyway, but then she saw its eyes. They were not the eyes of a monster. They were filled with pain, fear, and something she knew very well, loneliness. Her chest tightened. She remembered her husband lying on the battlefield, covered in blood, as she held his hand for the last time. She remembered the helplessness, the silent scream in her heart as she watched him fade away. This creature, whatever it was fighting for life, just like her husband had. Mira took a deep breath. Her hands shook, but she stepped closer. "It's okay," she whispered, even though she knew it could not understand. "You're hurt. I'll help you." The figure blinked slowly as if trying to understand her words. She dropped to her knees beside it. The ground was hot from the crash, but she ignored the heat. With shaking fingers, she pulled a piece of cloth from her dress and pressed it against the wound. The glowing blue blood soaked through quickly. The creature flinched but did not push her away. Instead, it let out a low sound, softer now, almost like gratitude. Mira's fear slowly changed into something else, pity. This was not an enemy. This was a living being in need. She looked around. If soldiers came, if the villagers found this creature, they would kill it. They would not see pain, only danger. She had a choice. Leave it here to die or take it with her. Her heart made the decision before her mind did. "I'll take you home," she whispered, "but you must be quiet." With all her strength, Mira pulled the wounded figure onto a piece of wood, dragging it slowly out of the crater. The lantern light fell on its face, strange, alien, yet strangely human in its expression. Every step was heavy, but she kept moving. The rain began again, hiding their tracks. When she finally reached her house, she pushed the door open with her shoulder and pulled the creature inside. She laid it on the floor, breathless and trembling. The alien's glowing blood stained her hands. She looked at them, frightened, yet also curious. Who was this being? Why had it fallen here? She didn't know. But one thing was clear. Her life would never be the same again. And as the storm raged outside, Mira looked at the wounded alien lying in her home and whispered to herself, "This is either the worst mistake of my life, or the beginning of something I cannot even imagine." The storm did not end that night. Rain hammered the roof and thunder rolled across the forest. Inside the small house, Mira sat on the floor, staring at the strange figure she had carried home. The alien lay motionless, its body stretched across the rug. The glowing blue blood had slowed, but it still pulsed softly like light inside glass. Its armor-like skin was broken in several places, and its breathing was heavy, ragged. Mira's hands trembled as she dipped a cloth in warm water and wiped the wounds. Each time she touched the creature, her heart raced. Part of her mind screamed, "What are you doing? This is not human. This could kill you." But another voice, the same voice that made her drag him from the crater, kept her steady. "No one deserves to die alone." She spoke softly as she worked, even though she knew he could not understand. "You're safe here. I'll try to help you. Please don't hurt me." The alien's eyes flickered open for a moment. They glowed faintly like silver reflecting moonlight. His gaze fixed on her face, weak but aware. Then he closed them again. Mira's chest tightened. She had expected fear, maybe anger, but instead she had seen only exhaustion in his eyes. She wrapped his wounds with strips of cloth and gave him water in a wooden cup. At first he did not move, but when she pressed the cup gently to his lips, he drank. A small sigh escaped him, almost human. Hours passed. Mira stayed awake, watching. The storm slowly faded, leaving only the sound of dripping rain. Exhaustion pulled at her, but she refused to leave his side. At dawn, the alien stirred. His hand twitched, then slowly lifted. Mira flinched but did not run. The hand was large, with long fingers and strange ridges along the skin. It trembled as it reached toward her lantern, as if drawn to the light. Mira whispered, "Don't be afraid. It's just fire." The alien pulled his hand back. His breathing grew faster. He tried to speak, but the sound that came out was a mix of growl and broken syllables, not human words. Mira shook her head gently. "I don't understand. But it's okay. You don't have to talk." She pointed at herself. "Mira." Then she tapped her chest. "Mira," the alien blinked slowly. After a long silence, he made a rough sound, trying to copy. "Mira," her breath caught. He understood. Not fully, but enough. A strange warmth spread through her. She smiled for the first time in a long time. Over the next 2 days, Mira cared for him in secret. She fed him soup, though he struggled with the spoon, and she helped him drink water. Sometimes he watched her with a steady gaze, silent but not hostile. Other times he tried to stand and failed, his body still too weak. On the third night, Mira heard helicopters far in the distance. She froze, listening to the low rumble as they passed over the forest. Light swept across the trees, though they did not reach her house. Her blood ran cold. They were searching. Not for her, never for her, but for him. Mira looked at the alien lying on her bed, covered in bandages and cloth. If they found him, they would not see a wounded traveler. They would see a monster, a threat. She whispered sharply, "You must stay quiet." No sound. The alien's glowing eyes met hers. He did not understand all her words, but he understood the fear in her voice. Slowly he nodded. Mira blew out the lantern and crouched beside him in the dark. The helicopters passed, their sound fading into the night. Only when silence returned did she allow herself to breathe again. The alien watched her, and for the first time Mira saw something change in his eyes. Trust. The next morning, he tried again to speak. This time his voice was softer, broken but clearer. He pointed at himself. "Kale," Mira blinked. Was that his name? She pointed at him, repeating softly, "Kale." The alien gave a small nod. A faint sound left his lips, something between relief and gratitude. That day, something shifted between them. They were no longer only caretaker and stranger. They had names. They had begun to bridge the silence. Mira showed him simple things: bread, water, fire, chair. She spoke slowly, pointing at each object, letting him repeat the words. Sometimes he failed. his tongue unused to human speech, but each attempt made her smile. And when he looked at her, there was no longer only pain. There was curiosity, but danger still hung outside. Mira knew the search was not over. Someone somewhere had seen the crash. Someone would come again. That night, when Cale finally slept, Mira sat near the window staring into the forest. She thought of her husband, of the war that had taken him. She thought of her lonely nights and her endless silence. Now, in the strangest twist of fate, she had brought a wounded alien into her home. A voice whispered in her heart, "This could destroy you. This could destroy everything." But another voice, stronger now, whispered back, "Or it could save you." And as she watched the stars above the forest, Mira realized her life was no longer her own. The moment she dragged Cale from the crater, her path had changed forever. The forest outside was calm, but Mira's heart was never calm anymore. Every day since the crash, she woke with two feelings, fear and hope. Fear that the soldiers would come. Hope that Cale would survive. Cale grew stronger. His wounds healed faster than Mira expected. His glowing blood no longer flowed, only faintly shimmered under his skin. He could sit up now, though standing was still difficult. Mira taught him simple words. She pointed at objects, spoke slowly, and waited. "Bread," she said, holding a small piece. "Bait red," Kyle tried. His voice was rough, his tongue heavy on human words. Mira laughed softly. She had not laughed in years, not since her husband's death. The sound surprised her, but Kyle looked at her with something almost like a smile. Soon he learned more. Water, fire, chair, and even her name. When he spoke Mira clearly for the first time, her heart tightened. He was not just a wounded stranger anymore. He was a presence in her life, filling the silence she had lived with for so long. One evening, she sat by the fire, peeling potatoes. Kyle sat nearby, studying the flames. He pointed at them and asked slowly, "Danger?" Mira shook her head. "Fire, not danger. If careful." Cale touched his chest, repeating, "Fire. Safe." Mira nodded. Safe. Something passed between them in that moment. A silent understanding. Both had lived through wars. Both had seen danger. But here, in this little house, for the first time in years, Mira felt safe. Yet safety was an illusion. On the fourth night, Mira woke suddenly. Dogs were barking in the distance. She froze. No one in the village kept dogs that barked like that. These were hunting dogs. Soldiers' dogs, her breath caught. She rushed to Cale, who slept on the bed. She shook his shoulder urgently. "Wake up, quiet soldiers." Cale's eyes snapped open. He listened. Even weakened, his senses were sharper than hers. He heard the distant voices, the crunch of boots in the forest. Mira pulled him off the bed. "Basement. Now." Together they stumbled down the wooden steps into the small dark cellar below the floor. It was cold and damp, filled with jars of food and tools. Mira covered him with old blankets and whispered, "Don't move. Don't speak." She climbed back up just as loud knocks hit the door. "Ma'am," a soldier's voice shouted, "open up. We're searching this area." Mira's knees shook, but she forced herself to breathe. She opened the door, keeping her face calm. Two soldiers stood outside, rain dripping from their helmets. Behind them, lights moved between the trees. "Did you see or hear anything strange last night?" one asked. His eyes were sharp, suspicious. Mira shook her head. "Only thunder." The storm was loud. The soldier glanced past her into the house. "We need to check inside." Mira's heart pounded. If they found Cale, it was over. She stepped aside, pretending not to care. "Go ahead." The soldiers entered, their boots heavy on the wooden floor. They looked under the table, in the bedroom, even inside cupboards. Mira's hands trembled, but she kept them hidden in her dress. One soldier walked toward the trapdoor to the cellar. Mira's breath stopped. He put his hand on the wooden latch. Thinking fast, Mira spoke. "Wait," she forced a nervous laugh. "The cellar is flooded. The storm broke the ground, it's full of mud. Nothing inside but rotten food." The soldier hesitated, looking at her. Rainwater dripped from his helmet onto the floor. After a tense moment, he pulled his hand away. "No need," he muttered. "We have more houses to check." They left, their voices fading into the forest with the barking dogs. Mira closed the door slowly, her body shaking from head to toe. She waited until silence returned, then rushed down to the cellar. Cale was still under the blankets, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He had not moved, not made a sound. When she pulled the blanket away, he looked at her with something deeper than gratitude. He whispered her name. Mira! Her eyes filled with tears. She sank to her knees beside him. I will not let them hurt you, she said, her voice trembling but strong. From that night, their bond was no longer only survival. It was trust. Days passed. Cale grew stronger. He could walk with Mira's help, his tall figure towering in her small house. She showed him the garden, the chickens, the old tools her husband had left. He studied everything with quiet wonder, as if each simple thing, an apple, a chair, a book, was precious. One evening, as the sun set, Cale traced a shape in the dirt outside, stars drawn with careful lines. He pointed at the sky, then at himself. His voice was low but steady. Home. Mira stared at the drawing. So many stars. Which one was his? She touched her chest, whispering, Earth. My home. Kyle nodded. Then slowly he drew 2 lines connecting his star map to the word Earth she had spoken. Mira's heart skipped. He was telling her something, that his world and hers were not so far apart. That night she lay awake listening to his slow breathing in the next room. Her mind spun with questions. Why had he come here? Was he running? Was he dangerous? But one truth kept rising above her fear. She did not want him to leave. The days after the soldiers' search passed in uneasy silence. Mira tried to return to her normal tasks, cooking, feeding chickens, chopping firewood, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every sound in the forest made her heart jump. Every shadow outside her window felt like a watchful eye. Kyle healed faster than any human could. Within a week he could walk on his own, though his steps were heavy and slow. His wounds closed, leaving faint glowing lines like scars of light across his skin. Sometimes at night, when the house was dark, Mira could see him glowing faintly in the corner of the room. At first it frightened her, but soon she found it strangely beautiful. Still, danger was always close. Some evenings she heard engines in the distance or saw lights moving in the trees. The military was not giving up the search. They knew something had fallen from the sky, and they would not stop until they found it. One evening, Cale stood by the window, staring at the forest. His eyes glowed softly in the dim light. Mira sat at the table, sewing a torn sleeve, watching him. Finally, she spoke. Kyle, why were you here? Why did you fall? For a long time, he did not answer. Then he turned, walked to the table, and sat across from her. His voice was rough but steady as he formed his words. A war. My people. War. Mira froze. She had not expected him to say that word. War. It was the same word that had taken her husband. Cale touched his chest. Soldier, but no more. He shook his head slowly, his face shadowed with grief. I leave. Run. Not fight. Mira's hands tightened on the fabric in her lap. He was telling her he had been a soldier too, but had deserted. Her heart ached. She remembered her husband's last day. He had been brave, proud, believing in duty. He had never run from war, and yet here was Cale, alive because he had chosen the opposite path. For a moment she felt anger, but when she looked into his eyes she saw no cowardice, only pain. Pain she understood all too well. Softly she said, You tired of war? Cale nodded. His voice dropped, almost a whisper. No more killing. No more death, only live. Mira looked down at her hands. Her husband had died for his war and she had been left with nothing. Now this alien, this stranger from the stars, sat across from her with the same scars of battle in his heart. Something bound them together in that moment. 2 souls broken by wars that had taken too much. But their fragile peace was not safe. That night, Mira woke suddenly. A light flashed through the cracks of her shutters. Not the soft glow of moonlight. This was sharp, white, and searching. She sat up quickly, her breath tight. Outside she heard voices. Kyle was already awake. His senses were sharper than hers. He moved to her side and whispered her name. Mira, danger. She grabbed his arm. Basement, but Cale shook his head. No, they... Close. The voices outside grew louder. Boots crunched in the soil. Dogs barked. Soldiers were sweeping the forest again, and this time they were closer than ever. Mira's heart raced. If they found him here, both of them were finished. Kyle's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He stepped toward the door, but Mira caught his hand. No, they'll kill you. Cale looked at her, then at the window. His jaw tightened. Hide you, not me. Mira's chest burned. He wanted to protect her, even if it meant being captured. But she would not let him sacrifice himself. Not after everything. She shook her head fiercely. We hide together. Or we fight together. For the first time since she had met him, Cale gave a faint smile, a sad, knowing smile. He touched her cheek gently, his rough hand surprisingly warm. Then he moved to the corner, pulled aside the broken boards of the floor, and revealed something Mira had never seen before, a piece of his damaged device hidden there since the crash. It was small, glowing faintly with the same blue light as his blood. Mira gasped. What is it? Cale spoke slowly. Beacon, call. My people. Her mind spun. If he used it, others like him would come. But would they bring peace or more war? Before she could answer, the sound of boots hit her doorstep. The soldiers were right outside. Kyle's eyes met hers. In them, she saw not only fear, but also decision. He whispered one word. Soon. The door rattled as soldiers tried to force it open. Mira grabbed Cale's arm. If they find us. He shook his head. They not find, trust. The device pulsed softly, then dimmed. Cale hit it again under the boards just as the door slammed open. Soldiers stormed inside, shouting, rifles raised. Mira stood frozen, her heart pounding. Cale standing tall behind her, his glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. The air was heavy with danger. One wrong move and everything would be lost. The soldiers stood in the doorway, wet from the rain, rifles gleaming in the lantern light. Mira's breath froze in her chest. Cale towered behind her, silent, his eyes glowing faint silver in the shadows. One soldier stepped forward. We've been tracking strange heat signals in this area. What are you hiding? Mira's heart hammered. She forced her voice steady. Nothing, just me. I live alone. The soldier's gaze slid past her, to the floorboards, to the corners of the small house. His eyes narrowed. Then you won't mind if we search. Before Mira could answer, Cale shifted. His chest rose, his body tense like a coiled spring. She felt the air thicken around him, like raw energy pressed against the walls. Mira whispered quickly, Kyle, no. She grabbed his hand, squeezing hard. His glowing eyes flicked to her, and for a second he stilled. The soldiers moved inside, boots heavy on the wood. They searched the table, the cupboards, and the bed. One moved toward the cellar door again. Mira's fear turned to cold steel. She stepped forward. That cellar's flooded. Mud and rot. Nothing there, but the soldier bent down anyway. He pulled the latch. The door creaked open. Cale moved. He crossed the room in one powerful stride and slammed the trapdoor shut with his hand, wood splintering under his grip. The soldiers spun, rifles raised. Mira screamed, No! The lantern shattered in the struggle, plunging the house into darkness. In that instant of confusion, Cale grabbed Mira's arm and pulled her toward the back door. They burst into the night as gunfire cracked behind them. The forest swallowed them. Rain poured, masking their footsteps, but the dogs barked and soldiers shouted. Flashlights cut through the trees, beams sweeping back and forth. Mira stumbled over roots, her dress heavy with water, but Cale never let go of her hand. His strength dragged her forward, faster, deeper into the forest. Branches whipped at her face. Her lungs burned. Still they ran. Behind them, voices shouted orders. The chase was on. Cale. Mira gasped. They won't stop. Cale slowed only when they reached a river. The water rushed wild and black under the storm. He turned to her, his face fierce. Hide. Mira shook her head, panting. No, together. For a heartbeat, he stared at her, then nodded. Without another word, he pulled her into the freezing water. They slipped under the riverbank, pressing against the wet stone, hidden beneath low branches. Mira's teeth chattered, her body shaking, but she bit back every sound. Flashlights swept over the water. Dogs barked at the edge of the river, but the rushing current drowned their trail. Mira pressed against Cale's chest, his large hand covering her head to keep her low. His body trembled with cold, but he stayed still, silent. The soldiers cursed, shouting to each other, then moved downstream, convinced their prey had gone with the current. Only when the forest grew quiet again did Cale pull Mira out of the water. She collapsed on the bank, gasping for air. We can't go back, she whispered, teeth chattering. She thought of her little house, the garden, the place where her husband's memories lived. It was gone now. Cale looked at her, eyes glowing softly in the storm's dim light. His voice was low but certain. Home. No safe. Must leave. Mira swallowed hard. Her chest hurt. She had lived in that house for years, guarding the memory of her husband, clinging to her past. Now, because of this alien stranger, she was forced to abandon it all. And yet she realized with a jolt she wasn't running for herself. She was running for him. Cale pulled the small beacon from under his cloak. The faint blue light pulsed steadily. Call. My people. Mira stared at it, fear and hope twisting in her heart. If he used it, his kind would come. Would they be saviors? Or would they bring more hunters, more war? Cale's gaze softened. He pressed the beacon into her hand. Choice. Yours. Her fingers closed around the strange device. It was warm, humming like a heartbeat. For the first time she realized the truth. Kyle trusted her more than he trusted himself. The storm eased. The forest dripped with silence. Mira met his eyes and whispered, Do it, call them. But we run until they come. Cale nodded. He tapped the beacon and the light flared, shooting a thin beam into the sky before vanishing into the clouds. They moved again, deeper into the woods. Mira's legs ached, her body frozen. But Cale stayed close, his hand never leaving hers. Every rustle in the trees made her flinch. Every shadow felt like a threat. But for the first time, she did not feel truly alone. Hours later, they reached a cave hidden between rocks. Mira collapsed inside, trembling with exhaustion. Cale covered the entrance with branches, then sat beside her. The beacon lay between them, glowing faintly. Mira stared at it, her voice a whisper. How long? Cale shook his head. Soon. Maybe. Mira leaned back against the stone, closing her eyes. She thought of her house burning in her memory, of soldiers searching the forest, of a husband lost to war. And she thought of Cale, silent beside her, his presence strong, unyielding. Her old life was gone. Ahead of her lay only danger, only uncertainty. But when Cale's hand brushed hers in the dark, she did not pull away. Instead, she whispered, We run together. Always. Cale's glowing eyes met hers. For the first time, he smiled. Outside, far above the clouds, a faint light blinked back, an answer to the beacon. Help was coming. But so was more danger. The cave was cold and damp, but it felt safer than the open forest. Mira sat with her back against the wall, staring at the faint glow of the beacon resting between her and Cale. Its pulse was steady, almost like a heartbeat reminding her that someone was coming. She should have felt relief, yet her chest was heavy. Relief was tangled with fear. What would arrive? What kind of people were Cale's people? Soldiers, hunters, or saviors? Cale sat close, his tall body bent to fit inside the cave. He looked tired, but his glowing eyes stayed alert, listening to every sound outside. Hours passed. Rain faded and the forest grew quiet. Too quiet. Then Mira heard it, the low hum of engines far above the clouds. She stiffened. Cale looked at her, nodded slowly. Ship. The word felt like a knife in Mira's chest. His ship, his home. His way back to the stars. She swallowed hard. Then you'll leave. Kyle studied her face for a long moment, then shook his head. Not want. Leave. His voice was low, careful, each word heavy with meaning. Want, stay. With you. Mira's breath caught. She had not expected him to say it aloud, though part of her had already known. In his glances, in his careful touch, in the way he always stood between her and danger. His feelings had been there all along. But how could that be? He was not human. He was from another world, another war, another life. And yet when he looked at her, she felt seen. Not as a widow, not as a broken woman, but as Mira. Her heart raced, but before she could answer, distant voices echoed in the forest. Not Cale's people, human soldiers. They were sweeping the woods again, closer, louder. Kyle tensed. They come, Mira grabbed his hand. Then we must go. They left the cave, moving quickly through the wet forest. Flashlights cut between the trees, voices shouted orders, and dogs barked wildly. The soldiers had found their trail. Mira's legs ached, her chest burned, but she refused to stop. Kyle's hand pulled her forward, guiding her through the dark. Above them, the low hum grew louder. Something massive moved beyond the clouds. The soldiers were too close. Gunfire cracked through the night, bullets tearing into the trees. Mira screamed as bark exploded beside her. Cale turned, placing his body between her and the danger. His strange armor-like skin flared faintly, the bullets glancing away. He roared, a deep sound that shook the trees, then dragged her faster. They stumbled into a clearing. The sky above split open with light. A massive shape descended, shadowed and glowing. Mira's mouth fell open in awe. The ship was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Silent, sleek, shimmering like liquid metal. The soldiers burst into the clearing behind them. Rifles raised. Shouts filled the air. Mira froze. This was it. No more hiding. Cale turned to her. His glowing eyes locked onto hers. His voice was steady, though the world around them shook. Mira, choose. Her chest tightened. Choose? He nodded. I go. Or stay. You, with me or here. Mira's heart broke open. Leave her world, her husband's memory, her house, all that was left of her old life. Or step into the unknown, with a being who had fallen from the sky, who had turned her loneliness into something alive again. The soldiers shouted for them to stop. Dogs barked. Guns clicked. Tears blurred Mira's vision. She whispered, If I go, I can't come back. Kyle's voice was gentle, almost a plea. If you stay, I can't return. Her breath shuddered. In that moment she realized the truth. Her old life had ended long ago. She had been holding on to a ghost, living in silence, waiting for nothing. But now, in the strangest twist of fate, she had found something new, something alive. Bullets cracked through the clearing. Cale shielded her, roaring again, his body glowing brighter under the fire. Above them the ship lowered, a ramp extending with dazzling light. Mira, he shouted. His hand stretched toward her. She stared at it, large, strange, yet warm, steady. Her heart screamed with fear and longing. Behind her, soldiers advanced. Ahead of her, the ramp glowed like a doorway to another world. Her choice burned in her chest. Then, with a sob, Mira grabbed his hand. Kyle pulled her forward, up the ramp, into the blinding light. Soldiers fired, but the ship sealed shut, bullets bouncing harmlessly away. The sound of engines roared, shaking the earth, and the forest vanished below them. Mira stumbled, breathless, inside the strange ship. Walls shimmered like glass, lights pulsed softly. She clung to Cale's arm, her body trembling. The ground fell away. The stars spread wide above them. Mira looked back one last time through the small viewing window. She saw the forest, the place where she had lived alone, where her husband's memory had kept her prisoner. It grew smaller and smaller until it was gone, her eyes filled with tears, not of grief but of release. Kyle stood beside her, silent, watching her face. His hand covered hers, warm and certain. Mira whispered, I chose you. Cale's voice was quiet but sure. We, together. And as the ship rose higher into the endless sky, Mira's fear melted into something new. For the first time in years, she felt alive. But deep in her heart, she knew the journey had only begun. The ship hummed like a living thing. Its walls glowed faint blue, smooth and endless, as if made from light and metal at the same time. Mira sat quietly, clutching the edge of a silver bench, her breath still uneven from the escape. Cale stood near the controls, his tall form calm but alert. His glowing eyes flicked between the symbols on the wall and the view outside. Through the window, earth shrank below them. Forests and rivers turned to clouds, then to oceans of blue and green. Mira's chest tightened as she watched. For years she had lived on that soil. She had cried, worked, and mourned there. Now with every passing moment it slipped further away. Tears burned her eyes. She whispered, It's gone. My home. Cale turned. His gaze softened. He touched his chest, then hers. Home. Here. His voice was quiet but certain. With you. The words struck her deeper than any wound. He did not see her house, her garden, or even earth itself as her home. He saw her heart as home, but before she could answer, the ship jolted. Lights flashed across the walls. Cale's expression hardened. He moved to the controls, pressing strange glowing symbols. What's happening? Mira asked, fear rising. Cale's reply was short. Pursuers, her blood ran cold. Soldiers? He shook his head slowly. Not human. My people. The ship lurched again. Mira gripped the bench. Her stomach turned as stars blurred outside. Then a second light appeared in the distance, a massive shadow, sharp and menacing, sliding out of the darkness. Another ship. Cale's jaw clenched. Warship, Mira's heart pounded. If these were Cale's people, why did he sound afraid? He turned to her, voice low. They want me back, to fight. To kill, I ran. They want punishment. Mira's breath caught. She saw the truth in his eyes. His desertion had not only made him an outcast, it had made him a target. The warship drew closer, its lights scanning. Kale moved quickly, pressing controls, steering them away. The smaller ship shook violently. Alarms echoed. Mira staggered, clutching the wall. "Kale, we can't fight them." He looked at her, his expression torn between determination and sorrow. His glowing hand reached for hers. "Mira, if they take me, you must live. You must be safe." "No," she shouted, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I won't lose you too. Not like my husband. Not again." The ship shuddered as a beam of light struck it, shaking the walls. Mira fell, but Kale caught her, pulling her close. For a heartbeat, their faces were inches apart, their fear mixing with something stronger. Mira's voice trembled. "We survived together." "Or not at all." Kale searched her eyes. Slowly, he nodded. His hand pressed the beacon still glowing on the panel. "One choice left, jump." Before Mira could ask, he slammed his palm on the control. The ship exploded with light. Stars twisted, the world bent. Mira felt weightless, as if her body was being pulled through a tunnel of fire and silence. She clung to Kale, her heart screaming. Then, silence. The ship steadied. The warship was gone. Through the window, a new sky stretched before them. Distant stars, glowing planets, a nebula shining like a river of fire. Mira gasped, tears on her cheeks. "Where are we?" Kale's chest rose and fell heavily. Far, safe. For now. Mira collapsed onto the bench, covering her face with her hands. Relief flooded her, but also grief. Earth was gone. Everything she had known was gone. Kale knelt in front of her. His glowing hand gently lifted her chin. His voice was soft. "Mira, you chose me. I choose you. Always." Her tears fell freely now, but she smiled through them. She touched his face, strange yet warm. "Then we'll make a new home, together." For a moment, the cave of her past, the house in the forest, her husband's shadow, all faded. What remained was this. Her and Kyle alive together under the endless stars. The ship drifted quietly, carried by light. Mira leaned against Kyle, her head on his shoulder. "Do you regret leaving?" Kale asked gently. Mira closed her eyes. "No, I regret only the years I lived without living." Kyle's arms wrapped around her. Steady and strong, outside the stars stretched forever. A universe of danger and wonder waiting for them. Mira whispered, her voice almost a vow. "We will face it all, together." Kyle's glowing eyes softened. Together. The ship vanished into the starlit horizon, carrying a widow who had lost everything and an alien who had once fled from war. Now side by side, they were no longer broken. They were beginning.